Chichu.
Many thanks, my colleague Vivian Ondera, for that report. Very well, let's give you a bit of data that I prepared for you on the food prices. So let's say you walked into a supermarket with 1,000 Kenya shillings. What can you get? Here then is that breakdown from your favorite supermarket. If you are to get maize flour, loose maize flour, 1 kg, you would buy it last year, same time, at 49 Kenya shillings. But now it's risen by about 4 shillings to 53 shillings. And then maize flour, the sifted one, of course, 2 kg goes for went for 117 before. Today you're going to have to cough 9 shillings more, of course, almost 10 shillings. Wheat flour, white, 2 kg, was trading at 126 last year in January 2021. 144 is what you'll have to pay for it today. And then mangoes, 1 kg, that is the much you're going to have to part for, a little shy of about an 8 shillings difference today. Let's give you more numbers on the same, on just how the cost of living is forever skyrocketing. And then spinach, 1 kg went for 56 Kenya shillings. Today, you're going to have to pay 12 shillings more. Of course, sukuma wiki, which is a staple food if you are in Kenya here, 51 shillings trading in January 2021. Today, you're going to have to pay 59 shillings more. Cabbages, 39 bob. Last year, 50 shillings more today. That's a difference of about 11 shillings there about. Tomatoes, 1 kg went for 95 Kenya shillings in January 2021. Right now, you're going to have to cough 103 Kenya shillings. A bit of numbers still on the same. Your total budget would come to 883 shillings if this was January 2021. Today, you're going to be left with just 1 shilling. And of course, if you wanted a carrier bag, if you went to a carrier without a carrier bag in the supermarket, for the bachelors who understand this, you're going to have to spend more than 1,000 Kenyan shillings if you have to get all this. That has risen by 13.1%. Those are the numbers. I understand there's a bit more. Oh, very well. So that's all we have for you. Let's now just put a human face to it and, of course, understand the numbers and where the market is headed. Joining me now in this discussion is Peter Thiga, an analyst at Craftboro, and, of course, Steve Biko. You all know him as Soko Analyst on Twitter. They're with me in studio today. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Very well. So we saw South Africa reduce the taxes from about 28% to 27%. Are we ever going to see that in Kenya, or in introspect? I'm just asking, are food prices ever going to get low? I'll go with you first, Steve.
Basically, for us, I don't think we are going to be in a position to lower taxes for the next probably decade.
Okay.
Because of a couple of things. One, our debt burden is actually very high. Because for every 100 shillings that carrier is collecting, 53 to 57 shillings are actually going to pay foreign debt.
Servicing
so
debt.
What we're left with is actually going to service local debt, then recurrent expenditure, and then basically trying to sort out unpaid bills and civil servant salaries. So unless we have a magician who's actually going to see how we can be able to jumpstart our economy in terms of manufacturing, agriculture, construction, logistics. I don't see us reducing our taxes. In fact, actually, I'm thinking we're looking for ways to be able to increase more tax so that we can be able to collect more money. Because now we've really financed a lot of our infrastructure projects, and they're not complete. We have a lot of our white elephant projects that need to be completed, and there's no money for that. So I don't think we're going to see any reduction of taxes for the next decade.
Peter, is Steve a prophet of doom? I mean, 10 years down the line, we are not ever going to reduce taxes. And of course, this only speaks to us raising them higher to meet all these demands. We have projects, we have debts to settle. Is Steve a prophet of doom?
Actually, Steve is spot on, because as he has mentioned, a lot of our debts needs to be serviced. Okay. And we are looking at a situation where government is looking for ways to increase tax revenue. So a lot of taxes are being introduced. As you can see, we have a digital tax that is being introduced. There's also excise tax, which initially used to be like more of a sin tax, but now we are seeing it being implemented towards consumer goods such as potatoes, tomatoes, and etc. So yeah, Steve is spot on. I agree with him completely that taxes are being raised.
I'm going to stay with you on this one. You've mentioned about the political class. Of course, we have been seeing them trading blames on who is to be blamed for the rising cost of living, a lot of digging up of historical issues, and you saw that raising of the taxes from 8 to 16% in the fuel tax and all that kind of stuff. But now they're trading blames, and particularly in a year we are expected to be voting and deciding who is going to lead the country next, and of course who is going to be in what position. Does this ring, is this a good sign for the country when politicians are trading blame games?
I mean, no, it's definitely not, because let me not even talk about the politicians. Let me talk about the government here, because you see, most of the time when our budgetary deficit is quite high, it's quite huge. Yeah? So when they want to implement the White Elephants project that Steve is talking about, infrastructural projects, and we don't have the money, so they go into borrowing.
Sure.
Okay. So when they go into borrowing, most of the time they go into the Bretton Woods institutions for money, and sometimes they even go to commercial loans, which are very expensive. So,
very expensive, definitely.
Yeah. So
and that come with very harsh conditionalities.
Exactly.
Equally.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you're talking about the Bretton Woods institutions, then you're talking about a set of conditions that come with the loans. So this will include we must show ways of increasing the tax revenue. We must show how we can tighten the budget and expenditure and etc. So in introspect, politicians or the government should not be in a position even to trade blames, because they're the ones who are controlling the situation as it is. They're the ones who have information. They have access to this budget, to whatever is going on. So for me, it's a very dangerous place that we currently are in, and I don't think even being able to talk about these things in the public space, like trading blames, is something to be tolerated.
Steve, I'm going to come back to you on this one. We woke up to a crisis, a global crisis right now. Russia has attacked Ukraine, and the reason why I'm bringing this on board for this conversation is because Russia is the third largest producer of oil worldwide. And remember, if fuel prices go high, they're a sure trigger to inflation in other areas. Just to give a bit of an update right now, is that Brent crude oil, natural gas, WTI crude oil, among other commodities, have already surged the most on account of Russia's Ukraine tensions. That diplomatic part, we are seeing other financial institutions going through bear drawdowns right now in the morning, when just the market is rising. A lot of volatility, but bear drawdowns are being witnessed. With that hindsight in mind, with regard to Russia being one of the biggest oil producers worldwide, are we going to see a more sustained sort of inflation with regard to commodities, given that oil is a sure trigger to such?
Actually, the global economy is actually recovering from COVID. So whatever is happening in the European continent is actually very unfortunate, because not just oil, because we're seeing the Brent crude oil has actually topped 102 per dollar. We're seeing a lot of stock markets, Japan, Europe, New York, Russia actually dropping. In fact, the Russian stock exchange has been suspended from trading. So we've seen US has halted the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. So we're going to see a lot of disruption in the supply chain globally, in terms of fuel, in terms of gas, in terms of core commodities like wheat. And this is actually going to have a bigger impact for emerging markets, because Russia is actually one of the top 5 exporters of wheat.
True.
So, and given what global, G8 countries have done in terms of sanctions, in a connected economy like Kenya, we're actually going to feel it. And I'm thinking by lunchtime today we'll be able to understand the true impact of what's really happening. And this is just in line with, we've been trying to recover from, in terms of supply chain management across the globe from COVID. We've not really fully recovered. The economy, we're actually getting there. Now this is actually going to take us back to where we were in second quarter of 2020. And if Russia keeps doing what they're doing, the UN are going to actually impose more sanctions, and this will see countries like Kenya suffer because we import a lot of wheat from them. Actually, we import our greatest exporter to us in terms of wheat is actually Russia. So we're going to actually see cost of food still going up in the country, and this will have a negative. I mean, we're looking at a toxic political environment. Our fuel price is actually very high, and given that the government is actually trying to do subsidies so that we can actually be able to afford fuel, this is actually going to make it very difficult in terms of their own planning with the high, I mean, most of our commercial loans and foreign loans are actually due. So I'm wondering how this administration actually, it's going to be done.
It's going to be a tough balancing act. Thank you for mentioning that about the self-regulation. Of course, we're going to be talking about that as part of the solutions. But I love how you put it that we're going to have there's going to be a cascading effect of the Russia's crisis right there. I'm going to ask you something about that in the near future. But then, Peter, I'm going to come back to you. The president yesterday in the highly hyped Sagara 3 mentioned that when he was handed down the economy, it was at 5 trillion. He has now boosted it to 13 trillion. Do you think that is a true illustration of what the economy is, and is the effect being felt by the Mwananchi?
Not really. First of all, if I may mention, okay, he has boosted the economy from 5 trillion to 13 trillion, but let us talk about the debt ratio to GDP. It's currently, I think they currently even raised it up, the limit.
Did you mean the debt ceiling?
The debt ceiling.
They're trying to raise it,
Yes, they're trying to raise it. Initially, let me just go back a little bit. When during Kibaki's time, how projects were being handled. Okay. The moment he has floated maybe an infrastructural bond or anything, or maybe something that needs to be done, he made sure that we have money to facilitate whatever you're trying to do. But now the situation is opposite now. We are trying to build infrastructural projects. We're trying to develop in a super fast way that we are not able to match up with our revenue. So yes, the economy might have grown, but it is usually sparked by government expenditure. It's not being felt by the common Mwananchi. For me, it would have been a different case if the opposite was true, when the private sector has really grown, and since the private sector employs quite a number of people.
Definitely.
Yeah. So it would have been felt that we would have felt that impact. Again, if I may mention on manufacturing. That is part of the Agenda 4 pillars that the government usually has. So for me, I felt like if they are able to focus on it and maybe boost it up, it will be able to, first of all, reduce the number of unemployment and provide high-quality jobs. With high-quality jobs, we're talking about
sustainability.
Of course, So such issues as inflation, high cost of living will not be the case, because what usually brings an issue is inflation is high, and the nominal income is not growing as fast as the inflation. So so basically, I don't think the Mwananchi is feeling that.
The Mwananchi is feeling that effect. Yeah. Fair enough. Let's get to solutions. Steve, he has mentioned that yes, there is that bit of the data of 5 trillion upon handing, and then he's going to hand over 13 trillion economy. The Mwananchi is not feeling the effect. How then does the Mwananchi do quote-unquote self-regulation in terms of their expenditure and in terms of coping with an ever-bulging cost of living and not proportionate income?
First and foremost, I think the numbers are wrong. Because one, we don't have the 2021 numbers from Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. We're still using
so
2020.
There are no metrics to...
Exactly. And I mean, if we were to look at our budgeting process, 2021-2022 budget was around 3-point-something trillion.
Okay.
So how we're getting to 13 trillion economy, I want to look at the numbers, and I want to look at exactly how the private sector has grown, because we're seeing serious contraction in manufacturing, serious contraction in agriculture, serious contraction in tourism.
To the extent we lost it to Tanzania manufacturing.
We actually, most of the Indian farms that actually focused a lot in manufacturing are moved to Uganda. So we're actually losing a lot of good business to the East African
neighbors.
So in terms of solutions, I think given that this is an election year, one of the best things that I will ask Kenyans to do is basically to vote in new leaders, completely new set of leaders who can actually put our interests first. Because the only way we can have a way to balance the act is to look at how we can be able to reform the tax aspect, look at how we can be able to fight corruption. Because if we're losing 2 billion a day on corruption, this is money that can actually be used to pay off the foreign and commercial loans we have, and then basically look at how we can be able to reduce the number of taxes we're actually paying, and also create harmonization of the both county and national taxation. Because in manufacturing, the manufacturing sector, and we actually have a big problem in terms of the county governments actually levying their own taxes and national government actually levying their own taxes. So there's no harmonization. And then secondly, Kenyans basically have to seriously look at personal finance and actually budget, because now we're just going to look at what is important. If you're earning some money, you need to look at ways to invest so that you can actually be able to automate your other surplus income, so that you can be able to pay off healthcare, education, and rent. Those are the three key issues we need to look at. So in terms of investing, it's going to be a problem. In terms of excess spending, guys don't have disposable income to do that. So high concentrated budgeting is actually going to be a key aspect for us to be able to survive. We need to actually participate in the political discourse so that we can actually educate fellow Kenyans on what we really need to look at in terms of what the good leaders, in terms of who can be able to look at reforming the tax aspect. We need a leader who will actually reduce taxes, because that's the only way you're going to get a breathing space to actually look around in terms of how we can be able to balance in terms of personal finance.
But Steve, we can't, you just mentioned earlier on that you're not seeing a predictability of reduction of taxes in 10 years, and that I wish we'd have more time on this one, but we'd like to just rest it at that point.
The only solution we have is strict budgeting.
And
we need to follow it up. And then the other thing is we need to look at, we need to make very core decisions. Do we move away from Nairobi to a more affordable county or town, and mostly just asking Kenyans to go back to their counties and make it easier. We need to stop rural-urban migration, and actually reverse it to urban-rural migration.
And that was the role of devolution.
I think devolution will be our saving grace here.
True, yeah. Yes. I agree. And of course, I wish we'd have more time and talk about that and the pending bills and everything. But that's why we rested right here on Business Cafe. We'll be talking about the cost of living. I had with me in studio Peter Thiga, who is an analyst at Kraftboru, and of course, Soko Analyst. That's how you know him on Twitter. His real name is Steve Biko. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for finding time for us on this one. Of course, we'll want to find more time and exhaust these issues at length. But then that's why we rest it right here. My name is Brian Jojotino. Many thanks for your company. Let's end the week tomorrow and talk about fintechs and how they are revolutionizing your access to finances. Good morning, Africa.